All right. Hello. Welcome, Chamber of Commerce family. We are here today with Teresa Myers in this really exciting Meet a Member segment. We're going to be talking about moving your body and releasing trauma. So before we get into the conversation, real quick, I want to just share a little bit about Teresa. She is a traditional naturopath, a member of the NIA Fitness training faculty, and is certified in embodied social justice. Teresa uses her training in lived experiences to help others learn to come home to their bodies and be the facilitators of their own liberation. That just sounds so freeing. It's like, I want to be liberated. and as a yoga teacher, I appreciate movement and the relationship
Yeah.
to emotional release. So let's talk a little bit about that. This concept of moving your body and releasing trauma.
Yes, thank you, Lori, and thank you for the chamber for having me today. When we booked this segment, I hadn't necessarily zeroed in on the fact that we were doing it today, and I think it's a perfect day to be talking about the release of trauma and collective trauma as we are honoring and celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. today. And what we're really talking about is how collective trauma, ancestral trauma, oppression, shame, and vulnerability, how that can affect the body from a physical, mental, emotional, spirit standpoint, and how we can use movement to release those sensations from our body, and then also infuse into our body the sensations of safety, dignity, and belonging.
Mm-hmm. So while we're talking about like this movement, I love the ancestral piece. I want to go back to that. But we talked a little bit about in your bio, like the NIA Fitness part.
Yeah.
I bet a lot of people haven't really heard of that. So
Yeah.
what is that exactly?
Thank you for asking. So NIA is actually celebrating its 40th anniversary. And so NIA is a somatic fitness and lifestyle practice. And it's one of the first low impact aerobic classes. It's done barefoot, and it's a fusion of martial arts, dance arts, and healing arts, and is based on moving the body the way that the body is designed. And part of that design is the nervous system and how a lot of the moves that we do can help regulate the nervous system.
So are these like classes, kind of like someone would go to a yoga class, or is this done one-on-one with people?
And so the main focus is in classes, but we can also do one-on-ones. And then there's also week-long training sessions as well.
And how do you determine as a practitioner, like where somebody, like in the body, like where somebody might be storing trauma?
Oh, that's a great question. So one of the things we do is a body awareness walk. And one of the things that we really talk about is, what does it mean to sense? For a lot of us, as a survival mechanism, a lot of us have even turned off sensing in the body. And so part of this is learning how to even sense. Like, do I really know that I'm even thirsty, or that I need to use the restroom? Like, going back to the basics so that we can then learn to then sense where trauma or oppression and other types of sensations may be stored in the body.
That's so fascinating. And I love this concept of ancestral trauma because, all right, so it all stemmed from watching this Turkish show on Netflix about, I think it's called like Another Self. I don't know. Have you seen that at all?
No, I haven't.
Oh, it's called Another Self. It's on Netflix. And
Okay.
It's a show about like ancestral trauma, how we will often, store genetically,
Yes.
these traumas inside of us based on our ancestral DNA. And you see it
Yes.
like, Holocaust survivors, which my
Yes.
husband, his mother was in a concentration camp.
Yes.
You see it when you talk about, like African American time of slavery,
Yes.
and working through that. I truly believe that this is like a thing.
It is. So I'll tell you an interesting story for me.
Mm.
All my life, I have hated being in the kitchen. Now I love cooking, but I was one that would even like peel potatoes in the living room. Like I fundamentally did not like being in the kitchen. And when we bought our first home, the realtor was like, "Well, I think you're really going to like it, but the kitchen's small." And we walked in. I was like, "I don't care." I was like, "I don't like being in the kitchen." I have never my entire life. We recently found out through our genealogy, we knew that we had an ancestor who came through the Underground Railroad, um, from Kentucky to Michigan. And so we had known that for years. But one of my cousins found everybody who came through the Underground Railroad, they took an oral history of them. And my cousin found the oral history of my great 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 grandmother who came through the Underground Railroad. Well, what had happened was she was the daughter of a rape between the plantation owner and her mother who worked in the kitchen. And at the age of 14, the daughter badmouthed her father, slave owner, and he went to whip her, and her mother stepped in the way. And then her mother, knowing what the slave owner was probably going to do to her, put her in the Underground Railroad by herself at the age of 14. Well, when my cousin read the story, the release, the shake in my whole body, and the realization of why I hated being in the kitchen all of these years. I know that that was what it was, the release, the tears, the body, and letting that story go has changed my relationship with the kitchen.
It's amazing. It's almost like those things that like are like you have a hang up over, but
Yeah,
it's like you don't know why. It's like I never had a kitchen trauma as a kid. It's
yeah,
not like I
yeah,
experienced it. Why is this happening?
yeah,
It's interesting. I have the same thing with sometimes like making phone calls. Like as a kid, I had making like calling my friends anxiety. And I'm like, why do I have this? I mean, I
right.
never had a traumatic, and it seems such a little thing,
Same, yeah,
and it got me thinking, this has got to be either like from a past life or like
yeah,
some ancestral thing that's
yeah.
passed on down.
Well, and epigenetics is saying that, we could be carrying 7 generations of
Mhm.
trauma
Yeah.
inside of us. And I think that's one of the things that's so beautiful about movement, is that movement can help release things that we aren't even consciously aware of.
Right. Well, and I mean, we're made up of like mind, body, spirit. So it's
Yeah.
almost like you can't just solve a mind problem with the mind. It's like you're forgetting there's like other pieces to the
There's other pieces.
puzzle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so through movement, it allows you to release, to explore, and like you said, for some people to just be able to, feel and sense
Yes.
again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for a lot of us, like I said, whether it's a survival technique or, I have friends who are teachers who, had to learn to shut down sensations of thirst or
Mhm.
going to the restroom because you have to be in the classroom all day, right? A lot of us have forgotten how to sense. And so relearning that, it's a skill just like anything else.
Right. Well, and you see that a lot too with trauma victims that have been, victims of rape or some kind of, sexual assault, that tendency to shut down. So even if it's present life, I think when you're talking about, movement as therapy,
Yeah,
there is, huge benefit to that as well, even if it's not necessarily an ancestral thing.
absolutely. And one of the things, we talk about in terms of when we were talking about oppression, also from a trauma standpoint is, what do you do if you are dealing with what would be a persistent trauma, right? If going to work every day brings on microaggressions or brings on conscious or unconscious biases, right? That's a ongoing, constant assault on your body, again, whether from a physical, mental, emotional, or spirit standpoint. And so having those tools and techniques to be able to help move that out on a daily basis. For those of us who are living in Black bodies, the constant, I'll use the word fear that I have, having being married to a Black man, raising a Black son, having tools to be able to cope with that ongoing fear when they leave the house until they arrive home safe, and I know that they're home safe. Um, all of that takes a toll on the body, and acknowledging that, sometimes is half the battle, and then being willing, and it wasn't easy, but being willing to allow those sensations, allow that fear, right, and not cut it off. Being able to look at myself and say, yes, I'm afraid, or yes, I've been hurt by something that a coworker said.
Yeah. I think, we ought to stop judging ourselves about what's right and wrong and what's good or bad. I mean, in some way, shape, or form, almost every person has some kind of trauma, whether sometimes I call it like a little trauma versus, a bigger trauma. But we all have our things that are passed down to us wherever we're from. And to judge doesn't really support this idea of, let's just see what comes up. Let's see what is stuck where, and let's release it so that you can move on, whatever that is for you.
I think that's very important. One of the things that I'm always telling everybody, because somebody will say, well, I know this probably isn't as traumatic, or this isn't as important, but it's traumatic, dramatic, or important to you. And that's all that's all that matters. We can't compare. I mean, the last thing we want to start doing is comparing traumas, right?
Right.
And if
not a competition.
Not a competition, no.
My trauma's better than your
trauma. That's right. So if it's meaningful to you, that's what matters. And if it's meaningful to you, and it's something that you want to heal from, that's what matters.
So are your classes, do you broadcast through Zoom? Like if someone's listening to this and they want to be part of your class, is there a way that they can participate, or do they have to be local to your community?
So I do have 2 Zoom classes that are available. One of the things that's unique is that the movements, yes, are vital, but also the further understanding of how important music is and the conscious selection of music. And so that's one of the beautiful things about NIA, is that we are very conscious of the music that we choose, because we understand the healing power of music as well. So you have the healing potential of the movements, and you have the healing potential of the music, and those 2 things are fused together to allow the experience that each unique body needs.
I might sign up for one of your classes. I'm just intrigued. I want to know what this is. And this conversation is timely because, like I said, I just caught this show on Netflix, and on Netflix, there was a book called It Didn't Start With You, or something like that was referenced in the movie. So I'm like, oh, let me get that from my library. And I started reading it. And, I just thought, with my trauma background and, teaching yoga and doing some past life stuff. This is a whole new take on it for me. And so it was just it's so timely to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's beautiful work. It's, it feeds my soul. It's a passion. And, and like I said, I wish everybody on this planet what was doing it. And I think if all of us had that opportunity to do something that helps us come home to our bodies, to understand our humanity, to understand our safety, our dignity, and our belonging, how that then radiates out into all of humanity.
Did this type of fitness start with just realizing that certain populations had like trauma from like social injustices, or was it just more of, oh, I found that this helps people get relief? Like, because your work, a lot of it, there's like that social justice piece.
Yeah, so it actually started from what you said 40 years ago. It started with just seeing the healing that happened through NIA and through NIA as a fitness and lifestyle practice. And then over the years, kind of taken that work and applied it towards that social justice and applying it towards that idea of that persistent type of trauma and really understanding how that can also lead to the chronic stress and the allostatic load that a lot of people carry, and how it has a potential to help alleviate that allostatic load and really help to alleviate some of that chronic stress.
Well, and when people are less stressed and they are resolved of, their own specific traumas, we have a much kinder society.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, people become more tolerant and more
Yeah.
understanding and less fearful, because I believe like any attack on any other culture, whether that has to do with sexuality or color or, ethnicity, it's just out of fear and like this, their own pent up stuff.
Yes.
Yeah,
I heard a speaker the other day on the news who said education plus empathy equals social justice. And I think in order to have empathy, right, I need to be in my body. I need to love myself. I need to feel safe. I need to feel dignity. I need to feel like I belong before I can even empathize with somebody else, right? And so that's why we talk about, that we are our own seat of liberation. And once I sense liberation, then I can sense that and want that and be empathetic towards others.
Yeah, we got an amen to that from a live watcher.
Nice.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah.
Awesome. So if someone wanted to connect with you or like take one of your classes, where would they go?
So my website is soulfulmovement.com. So soulful movement is all one word. And on there is also my email and phone number, so you can reach out if anybody has any questions on the topic. I could talk about collective trauma and movement all day long. So even if somebody wants to reach out and have further conversation, I would love to.
You mentioned about music, and sometimes like my thoughts go all over the place and things come back to me, and we do have to end here in a minute or so, but I appreciate your comment about being very mindful about music, because that's something as a yoga teacher that I am always aware of. And I teach Kundalini, and we do have music, and music can be a trigger to people.
Yeah.
Especially like modern music songs. It reminds people of stuff, pleasant, not so pleasant. So you really have to be careful these days when you're doing those kinds of things.
Yeah. Being careful, but then also I think part of it too is, for me, when I'm teaching groups or populations, say for example, if I am working with a group of other Black females, really doing research, like there are phenomenal women out here who are doing amazing music around social justice and what it means to be a Black woman in America. And so bringing that music in as part of the teaching and moving to that music, the change that creates for others, it is amazing.
Wow. So exciting. I so appreciate you coming on here. And
well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, have this conversation with us and just to share your talents with the rest of the Holistic Chamber family. So if you're watching this, whether it's live or on the replay, and you want to reach out to Teresa, take one of her classes, I did put the link to her website in the chat box. So go ahead and connect with her. If anything, just to tell her that you resonate with what it is that she's doing here. So thank you so much, Teresa.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Have a great rest of your day, everybody.
Yes.